Hey, I'm Mont PR, and this is the Coolpix B500. So in terms of DSLRs, there are a lot of people who tend to go for the more expensive DSLRs with their first purchase with a removable lens or more capabilities. But there's definitely a lot of great lower end DSLRs which have a lot of the features of the higher end DSLRs in watered down versions with a more user friendly experience, which kind of helps you learn to use a more capable camera than a traditional point and shoot or a phone camera. And for this kind of purpose, this is kind of where the B500 fits in very well. So in terms of the looks and form factor, the B500 has a pretty small form factor, has a grip for easy holding, and it looks kind of like a regular DSLR with a removable lens. But it's small, but it's quite heavy for its size. It's 1.19 pounds, and it comes with the strap and a lens cap with a string to attach to the camera, and 4 AA alkaline batteries. So in terms of what it comes with, it's pretty standard. Now the colors and customizability, it comes in red, burgundy, and black. Now the one I have is the red model. The burgundy and the black one are also available. So I mean, it's up to you on which one you want to choose with that. So for starting out, this isn't really too big or bulky of a camera. You can just put it in just about any bag. It doesn't hurt your shoulder by wearing it around your neck for long periods of time. Now for the specs, it comes in pretty standard for this type of model. It comes with a 16 megapixel 1 2/3 inch CMOS sensor, Nikon f3.0 to 6.5mm ED lens with image stabilization for a decent aperture range, 22 to 900mm focal length range, or 40 times optical zoom for a wide range of shooting conditions, a 3-inch tilting LCD screen for viewing at different kinds of angles, a full 1080p video at 30 frames per second for good video quality, ISO from 125 all the way up to 6400, 7.4 frames per second continuous shooting for like sports and faster scenes, and 18 different shooting modes, and a remote control and sharing via the SnapBridge app. So in my opinion, for a starter DSLR, it really kind of covers the bases in terms of all kinds of shooting conditions and photography interests. I've taken all types of photo in a variety of shooting conditions, and that kind of variety can help you kind of find out where you want to take your photography, and it can kind of shape your decision when you go to buy a more expensive DSLR, when you start buying lenses and other more expensive accessories. Now while the megapixels aren't anything insane, you can definitely get some really sharp and crisp images if you get your conditions right. At 4,608 by 3,456 photos, these 4x3 photos come out nice and sharp if you get your conditions right. Now for the big boy, performance. In terms of modes, there's 10 different modes on the mode wheel, and some have more modes within them. So the ones I found the most useful were the scene mode, the night landscape mode, backlighting, and the auto mode. Those were the best modes, the most consistent modes for me. The wide focal range kind of lets you do large landscapes as well as shoot from long distances, so you get a little bit of telephoto and wide views for those landscapes. While some of the other modes had their uses, these delivered the most crisp and consistent results for me. They tended to give more control over my scene, in my opinion. So those are the modes I would go towards if you're trying to get the most consistent results. Auto modes tend to have the shutter speed a bit too slow, and only the ISO can be adjusted manually. So to get ready for some slightly grainy images if you use auto mode in any kind of low light. A lot of these modes where the camera had to determine the scene and conditions, they came out way oversaturated in my opinion, overexposed, or not as crisp as I'd like. The modes most guilty of this were the scene auto selector mode and the auto mode without editing any of the settings. This kind of be expected, I mean, with this kind of camera, and adjusting to the settings is definitely the way to go. Some of the more niche modes I used less were the short movie show mode, smart portrait mode, and the creative mode. They all kind of incorporate features that are more common on phones, like filters or clipping video together and collages. So those weren't things I particularly use because I would do those kinds of things on my phone or on my PC, but if those interest you, they're definitely nice to check out. Things that I do wish the camera had were raw shooting, which can really make things a lot easier in post, faster lens at wide and telephoto, and manual focusing on modes other than just auto mode, and also being weatherproof would have been a nice thing to throw in as well. But you know, I'm not really sweating that too much. It's not that big of a deal for a camera at this price. Also, there's no viewfinder or external flash shoe, but they're really not that important when you consider that this is kind of a entry-level DSLR, and it already doesn't have a lot of the features that you would expect from the traditional one you would go for in like the $400 to $500 range. So it's not really something I'm that concerned about. It does have the regular flash where it flips up, but these are kind of things that it's kind of hit or miss with whether you want these things or not, so you'll just have to make that choice. So now we're getting on to video. The video quality was passable at best. It does shoot 1080p at 30 frames per second, but the quality of the video is pretty average. It's not anything to like write home about. There are phones that can get quality up to par or better than this. I wouldn't recommend this camera for someone looking for like super great quality video at a nice price, but the video is alright. The focus definitely isn't the fastest, which is to be expected. It's definitely not slow, but it's okay. It's solid for the price when you give it time and you don't move it around too much. In low light is definitely where this camera suffers though. The quality in low light takes a big hit just because the ISO has to crank up so high. It's only f3, so it's just not able to keep up, and the sensor's not that great either, so those kind of things add up, and this kind of where you have to cut corners when you have a camera at this price. Okay, for ease of use and smoothness, for ease of use, this camera is definitely great. All the features are clearly explained outside the menu. They're in common language. I definitely advise downloading the manual though, and looking through if there's things that you don't understand. The software never hiccups. There aren't too many issues with that, so it's pretty good in that regard. One thing that I don't like is that you can't turn on the camera at all unless the lens cap is off, which exposes the lens to dirt and dust. When you're just walking around and you want to look at your pictures, you have to take the lens off, and it's kind of an annoyance if you don't attach the lens cap to the camera too, because you have to keep up with the lens, but you know, that's just something you have to take into consideration. Battery life is solid. On a new set of batteries, I was getting about 500 to 600 shots on this before having to change out the batteries, and I could shoot for weeks at a time before having to switch them out. So in my opinion, it has some shortcomings, but the only ones that are really important for the type of user that will be looking for this kind of camera are the lack of weather sealing, no manual focus in all the modes, and no raw shooting. I mean, if you're doing things like using an external flash, you need a faster lens than like f3, then you should be looking at some of the more expensive DSLRs. So for an entry-level DSLR, this is a really solid choice for anyone looking to get into photography. It checks a lot of boxes in different types of photography and really can help you kind of figure out the kind of direction you want to go with your content. If you're looking for a good starter camera, you can't go wrong with the B500 unless you dabble in a lot of the features that are standard in the more expensive DSLRs without the big price tag. And for me, it was a great way to learn the ins and outs of photography, so it's definitely a solid choice. Now, if you enjoyed this review of the B500, you can like the video. It helps me get an idea of how good the video was, and subscribe if you want to see more reviews. Alright, I'm out.